Call meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. Welcome to the March 9th session of your Brookings City Council. Ask City Clerk to please record attendance.
Mayor and council members, as we are not all in the same location this evening, when I call your name, please respond with present. Bacon?
Present.
Brink?
Present.
Collins?
Present.
Corbett?
Present.
Niemeyer?
Present.
Tilton Burn?
Present.
Wendell?
Present.
Okay, thank you. Council, first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Take that as a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, please call a roll.
Niemeyer?
Aye.
Tilton Burn?
Aye.
Wendell?
Aye.
Bacon?
Aye.
Brink?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Corbett?
Aye. Okay, consent agenda is approved. There were no items removed from the consent agenda. So at this time, we'll go into open forums and presentations report, and I'd like to call Matt Rhodes, the chair of the Human Rights Commission, to join me down front for a pretty exciting night. So Matt.
Yeah, we got some fun stuff to report on. Good evening, Council and everyone. Oh, there's a lot of you. So tonight, we honor a few Brookings students for their essay submissions for the Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month essay competition that the Brookings Human Rights Commission sponsors every year. Traditionally, in past years, the contest is focused around a quote of Dr. King's, and it allowed for artwork to be submitted as well. However, due to the considerable strain of students and teachers due to COVID right now, we figured it'd be easier for students just to submit essays electronically. But this year, we also wanted to expand the concept and allow for students to broaden their understanding and knowledge of Black history. We had around 20 essays and poems submitted this year, and I'm very proud to have seen the effort that these students have showcased. So the very first word, and I apologize for any mispronunciations, goes to Brookings High Schooler Zoe Henderson. So yeah, come on up and get your award from the mayor, and if you want, a photo opportunity.
We should mention it, probably won't pick it up. Not, you don't know that. But if you want a photo, just get one. Well, nobody else wants a picture with me, you as well.
Sure.
You guys look great.
You should mention there's a cash prize inside it.
Yes, and yeah, congrats again. And even though she was the only high schooler to have submitted an essay, she completed her essay with a near perfect score, which we haven't seen in quite a few years. So well done. Moving on to Mickelson Middle School, the third place winner goes to Alex Kiden-Garthasy. All right, and the second place winner for Mickelson Middle School goes to Shay Lafers. And lastly, the first place winner for Middleton School with a perfect score, and she is reading tonight's essay, is Candace Sackrider.
One of the lessons that I have learned from my parents has come from the worst moments in our world. Moments such as natural disasters, terrorist attacks, school shootings, and global pandemics naturally draw our attention to the negative. What my parents have taught me is that in these terrible moments, we look closely and we can always find heroes. African American history is filled with tragic moments and struggles. In nearly all of those moments and struggles, there have always been incredible heroes. The heroes of Black history that embrace the idea that there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him so. These leaders of not only Black history, but also American history, understood that you sometimes have to do something even if it is not popular or what everyone else is willing to do. They knew to make a change, they had to do what was right. Ruby Bridges is quite impactful for me as an African American sixth grader. Ruby, as a 6-year-old little girl in Louisiana who wanted to go to an integrated school. She faced hatred and racism from a large number of white people and anger from some Black friends, just because of where she wanted to go to school. Ruby refused to let others stop her from getting proper education. She once said, "Don't follow the path, go where there is no path and begin the trail." Another important leader in Black history is Martin Luther King Jr. Martin was a pastor and civil rights activist. He worked to overcome racism and injustice. His famous I Have a Dream speech shared his dream that heroes from equality would create a better world for everyone. This inspires me because I also have a dream that I want to come true. That dream is to make a difference and help others. As an African American girl in a mostly all-white school in Brookings, South Dakota, there is times much like Ruby Bridges and Martin Luther King Jr. I need to stand up for myself and what I believe in. Some examples are when classmates do not understand that is inappropriate to touch my hair, when classmates ask me questions about adoption that are personal and not their business, or when we talk about topics related to Black history and they stare at me and make me feel uncomfortable. These moments have taught me that I have to stand up for myself even if it is not popular. I am so glad my parents have taught me to look beyond the tough moments and find the heroes. They are always there. Ruby Bridges and Martin Luther King Jr. were heroes through some of the roughest times in America's history. They had to make a choice to live by the words, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him so." They were heroes, and I hope to be one too.
Well, congratulations to all the students and parents. You had a big part in this too. Thank you. You're exactly right. You can tell our future looks pretty bright with these great young leaders coming up. Now, this is the point where we're going to take a pause. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting, or you certainly can leave if you'd like. So I'll turn and walk back up there, and if you want to leave, we're not going to be offended. How's that? Okay, at this time, I'd call on City Engineer Jackie Lanning for a presentation.
Okay, good evening. Tonight, we're excited to announce that the City of Brookings had won an award in excellence in concrete paving from the American Concrete Pavement Association for our 22nd Avenue project. And we received the Gold Project Award that we found out here from our virtual annual conference, which was too bad we couldn't attend in person because it was in Nashville this year, but we did view it online, and that was really exciting. And we have Jason Reeves here today, the Executive Vice President of the South Dakota chapter of the American Concrete Pavement Association, to present the award to the City of Brookings. And we also have Jason Peterson and Jeff Cooley from Civil Design, Inc., and Brad Timmons, who's the contractor from Timmons Construction. And Jason would like to say a few words here.
Thank you, Jackie, Mr. Mayor, and City Council. Once again, I'm Jason Reeves. I was here about a year ago, just before everybody was all spread out. I think some of you might have remembered that, for our state award. And our state awards for excellence in concrete paving are submitted to a national committee and goes against many, many projects around the entire country. And I think when I left here that night, I said, I had a good feeling about this project. I really did. I've judged these awards in the past, and I know what a good submittal is, and I know what a good project is. And I just had a good feeling about it, and sure enough, there's a silver winner and a gold winner for each category, and the 22nd Avenue fit into the category of municipal streets and intersections, less than 30,000 square yards of concrete surfacing. And if you think about it, it's, a project of that size isn't huge, so there's a lot of those around the country, and a lot of those get submitted. And the 22nd Avenue job was chosen as the #1 project in the country in 2019. And that, like I said, that was at our local awards last February, and it was judged last summer, and was supposed to go to it went to our national awards late last year, that we were supposed to go to in Nashville, but we did virtually. So once again, applause to Jackie and Civil Design and Brad Timmons on a great project, and we truly appreciate your support on it. And Jackie, I wanted to bring one other item of topic up, as I know we're in the city of Brookings, but with several South Dakota State, I believe, alum on this council. Last fall, South Dakota State University was awarded a new program within the College of Engineering, and I believe it was in the Brookings Register, and it may have been publicized elsewhere up here, but as an alumnus of South Dakota State University, about a year ago, I got into contact with Teresa Hall, who's the construction management department head at South Dakota State, and then Bruce Berdanier, and we felt South Dakota State would be a good candidate for this program. And this Concrete Industry Management Program, or CIM program, is only at 4 other universities in the country, in Tennessee, New Jersey, Texas, and California. So there's obviously a gap if you think about that geographically. And with a very strong concrete industry presence in the upper Midwest, we have an aging group of people in the industry that want to retire, but we really don't know some of these people that are going to step into their spots. And rather than trying to snag people from Texas or California, a group headed by a guy out of Semstone, which is in Minneapolis, the regional steering committee, wanted a university in the upper Midwest for this program. SDSU went up against 4 other universities and ultimately was chosen as the university. They've done, for those of you that have been around for the last 20 years, the amount of upgrades they've done up there, especially with what Jerry Lohr has put into the College of Engineering, it's tremendous what they have on campus, and they sold it. Barry Dunn was tremendous in his desire to have the program, and like I said, the National Steering Committee decided to award SDSU with the program. Ultimately, the program is looking for donors and from the industry in the upper Midwest, and there's a national steering committee that's matching it dollar for dollar up to $500,000, and we're hoping to raise $500,000 within the upper Midwest to bring $1 million or more to SDSU to kick this program off. So as residents of Brookings and potential alumnus, I know some of you are of SDSU. I think we should be proud that this program is going to be at SDSU, and I'm excited to have them send out graduates not only into South Dakota, but the Midwest and the country, because I think they're going to do a tremendous job. So I just wanted to bring that forward tonight. Like I said, I thought it was in the Brookings Register at some point, but it's really exciting as an alumnus and a person in the concrete industry to see it coming to SDSU. So we'll take our pictures for their national award, and we'll let you go on with your meeting.
Outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie. Guess the only thing we can say after that is go big, go blue, huh? I know they're all alum up here, so I don't know why nobody jumped in, but that's all right. All right, thank you. Okay, this time calling the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor, City Council members. DJ, if you'd go ahead and come on up. Uh, as our very first City of Brookings Public Works Director. DJ started with us last Monday. He comes to us from Minnehaha County, where he's been there for the past 10 years. Prior to that, he was with the City of Sioux Falls in the engineering department, also worked as a project manager, as well as working with our solid waste division there in Sioux Falls. He obtained his education here at SDSU in environmental and civil engineering. DJ will be responsible for the public works department here at the city, and that now contains the landfill, collections, streets, engineering, and stormwater, as well as the airport. So please help me welcome DJ to the organization and the community. And DJ, if you'd like to share a few things.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Well, this is my second week on the job so far. So far I've been able to meet all the department heads, the leadership team, and a lot of the staff. Really an excellent team that's been assembled and wonderful leadership. And I'm just really excited to be part of that and continue to help Brookings move forward. And look forward to meeting all of you councilmen, and women, and mayor, and working with you here in the future. And it's a really great city, and I'm just really happy to be a part of it.
And we're welcome home, Jack Rabbit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, DJ.
Thank you.
Now I'll call on CFO Eric Rangel for a 2020 CFO report.
Good evening. Yes, as Mayor Corbett said, we're going to go over the 2020 full year results for the CFO report. Hopefully, this will provide you with our financial position at the end of 2020. A small disclaimer here, these are, as of now, estimates. These are best estimate. We don't expect material variances, but our financial audit hasn't wrapped up. Once it wraps up in June, we will come forward with our financial statements, official on our website, and that is when no more changes will be allowed to these numbers. So the first slide, so how do we do on tax revenue? As you know, we were very concerned at the beginning of the pandemic of where we're gonna end. The long story short, we ended up 0.1% favorable to budget. That said, that's about 1.8% below budget, and that's the chart on your right that you say it compares to year over year, 1.8% decrease, but to budget we're favorable given our conservative budget practices. The table on your left side has all the sales tax revenues, first, second, third penny, and the bid tax, and then the property tax. The budget amounts are the next two columns. The actuals are the third column. The yellow columns are if we were favorable or unfavorable versus budget. So the story here, like I said, we're favorable versus budget, kind of flat. And if we add on the property taxes, we're $103,000 favorable to budget, or 0.6%. It is important to note that these numbers include a settlement from previous years of about $144,000. Without that one, our sales tax revenue would be 2.8% lower than last year, or 0.9% below budget. And this slide changed from the previous one that we sent earlier to City Council. I apologize for that, but we just wanted to provide a snapshot by industry. How do we do? And as we can see, the agriculture, the construction, and the wholesale trade industries increase year over year, but we did see declines in retail trade, and I guess all across the board. The most material one was retail trade, which declined about 6% year over year, and that's about 60% of our tax revenue there. So that said, how do we do compared to the U.S. as a whole? The table at the top shows that for the last two years, we've been outperforming real GDP growth. So the first row, it's the City of Brookings sales tax revenue year over year, the growth. We experienced 3.5 growth in 18, 4.8 growth in 19, and then a decline of 1.8 in 20. That compares to GDP of growth in 18 of 3%, 19 2.2%, and then in 20 3.5%. So the story here is that we outperform our U.S. market. That said, we're still not out of the woods, and we have forward outlook in later slides of how we're planning for 2021. Also important to note that inflation in 2020 was the lowest inflation experience in the last 3 years, and it's just half of what it was in 2018, which should help to keeping our prices a little bit lower. All right, and lastly, I would like to provide you with an overview, a quick overview of our sales tax performance metric. This metric is part of an overall initiative by the city of providing key metrics so that our citizens could see how we're performing as a city in terms of our targets. This initiative as a whole will be showcased at a later this quarter at a public meeting, but for now, I'd like to focus on the sales tax performance metric, which can be accessed through the link listed here. And it contains year-by-year comparison by tax type, industry, as well as details of the hospitality industry and the remote sellers' online tax activity. That one is a new data point, and you can see it on the lower right bottom. We started receiving this data since October last year from the state. And as you can see, for example, in January this year, we received about $76,000 for remote sellers, which is the internet tax, put in other words, and that is about 6% of our first and second penny revenue. We don't have any year-over-year comparisons, so hopefully over time, we will be able to compare how it behaves over time. All right, so next is like, well, how do we do in the general fund? And as a reminder for everybody, the general fund is where we fund key operations for the city. So the table here shows to the left our departments of the city, and we list all the expenditures. The first two columns, again, is the budget. Then the third column, it's how did we do compared to budget. The yellow one, it says if we're favorable is negative or blue, and then unfavorable would be black. The percentage of total spend, and then the last column on the right, it's the revenue. How do we do against plan? So in terms of expenses, if we go all the way to the bottom, our total expense was at 88% of the total budget, which is about a $2.3 million surplus versus budget. The main driver of this is our department heads' efforts and city manager to reduce their budgets proactively back in March for the unforeseen expected revenue declines. We also had other drivers, which were vacancies that amounted to be about $644,000, and the closing of the recreational facilities during COVID. That was around $426,000 of expense that didn't happen. In terms of revenues, we were $4.1 million higher. This is mainly driven by the $3.8 million for the COVID reimbursed expense from the CARES Act. This helped offset around $400,000 in declining fees that were planned to be collected because of all these recreational programs. So at the end of the day, we were about 88% of expense or budgeted expense used. And a little bit more detail on the Corona Relief Fund. So as a reminder, the state allocated us about $5.5 million based on our population. Our goal was to maximize it 100%. Unfortunately, because of the restrictions with it, we were able to get about 75% or $4.1 million. This was a joint effort with a number of city entities. The city ended up receiving $3.8 million of these 4.1, BMU $193,000, the health system $120,000, and Beta $16,000. More detail on what was reimbursed or not is included in the appendix in the presentation, in case you have any questions. Recently, the news said that there's a new COVID relief package going on. It is expected to have about $350 billion for state and municipalities, but we don't know. I mean, it hasn't passed. They're expecting to be signed by the end of this week, but we don't know the rules around this amount. So. Next slide shows on the left side is the CIP fund, which funds more all of our capital investment projects, and then all other funds are grouped together in the second line. So we'd like to start with the CIP fund. All the way to the right, you see that it was used about 65.6%. So that ended up with a surplus of $3.4 million. So the surplus was driven by, again, early cuts due to COVID. That was about $1.3 million. We tried to reactivate some of these projects, and some of them did happen on the second half of last year, but others, because of timing, we couldn't bring back. Most of these work that couldn't be brought back, it's in the form of the amendment number 2 that's getting approved today, hopefully, to carry forward that work or to do that work. If we look on the right, the favorability was driven by street improvements, about $1.5 million. The infrastructure risk fund that we build every year by $250, and we're just accumulating it in case for unplanned maintenance. That's about $500,000 that we're carrying forward to this year. The Sweetfield Center infrastructure was reduced by $300,000. Park and rec improvements around $250,000. And fire department infrastructure about $230,000. And then lastly, as a whole, the city is about 86% or 87% of total budgeted spend. All right, so the Swiftfield Center, how did they perform this year? I gotta say that despite an extremely challenging year for its industry, they finished the year at $107 surplus versus budget, and you can see that on the third column all the way to the bottom. The first column has the year-to-date actuals, the second column has the budget, and then the third one is the difference year over year. So how did they manage to do that great? So kudos to the Swiftfield Center leadership team, who proactively, even though revenues were down around 27% year over year, they were able to secure a PPP loan that will hopefully be transformed into a grant. They recruited 2 national cattle shows. They provided disinfecting services to the city facilities, and they also provided ICAP meals to offset that revenue decline. They were also proactive in reducing expenses by around $760,000, which resulted I mean, this was driven by cost reduction initiatives, which included payroll and personnel adjustments. But we also acknowledge that we're not out of the woods yet, and in 2021, at least the first half is going to be challenging for them. So Tom and team are working on reviewing their business plan and making adjustments as needed. And talking about 2021, as a reminder, back in September when we had to budget for 2021, we were conservative. And in 2021, we did bake in some growth, but it wasn't the same growth that we'd experienced in 2018 or 2019. So for first and second penny, we baked in 5.3% growth from what we estimated at construction in 2020 of 8%. This represents about a 66% growth or recovery from the previous year. 3B and bid taxes, given the nature of the industry, their recovery is about 50% of their declines from last year. So far in January, the tax receipts, and these are the 2 tables in the bottom, has been actually lower than last year. As you can see in the first and second penny for January, it's 2.3% and 2% below last year. But fortunately, given our budgeting practices, they are above budget. So we're about 2 and 2.2% above budget. Unfortunately, 3B it still hasn't recovered. It's 20% or almost 21% below last year and 6.2% below budget. And the bid tax is 14% below last year and 15% above budget. So with that, I would encourage our citizens to continue supporting on restaurants and our bars. So hopefully we can reverse this initial trend for this year for the 3B. And lastly, the City Council priority project list. As a reminder, this whole list, it's funded by the unassigned cash that we're left with at the end of the year. And in simple terms, is after we take out all our needed reserves or all our liabilities, then we're left with this bucket of cash, if you put it that way, where we can fund the City Council's priority projects. So I'd like to start at the top left. And since we haven't closed our 2020 audit, we're starting with the 2019 unassigned reserves or free cash, if we put it that way, of $9.7 million. We take out the 20% reserves that we need to have per our financial policy for reserves. And then the fourth row, it's what we're estimating at this point to end 2020 for our general fund. That's about $3.2 million of surplus that's added to the pile. And then we take a 20% variance factor just to be conservative, since those numbers are not final. At the end of the day, currently we're estimating to have $8.8 million to fund the City Council priority projects. Now, the second table down from the left, it's the City Council approved projects, and these are projects that formal action has been taken, and the only projects that we have right now is the 2021 facility improvements, which are a result of the McKinsey study that they conducted last year. It's about $1.4 million, and this was approved during the budget back in September. After these approved projects, we end up with a balance of $7.4 million to fund the primary projects. And these projects are listed in the darker blue on the bottom left table. And these are listed in priority order based on staff recommendation and our meetings with City Council. We start with the 2022 facility improvements from the McKinsey study. That's $1.1 million. The fire department training tower, that's $440,000. The public safety center, that's estimated to be $7 million. The housing study, $25,000. The food bank, $300,000. The downtown master plan, $35,000. And the indoor rec facility, about $850,000. All these primary projects add up to be $9.7 million. So if we do the math, top right, we ended up at a deficit of $2.3 million if we were to fund all the primary projects. And again, just funding them with our available cash. There are other means to fund if City Council has the appetite to do them all. But that's just, it's the balance, assuming that we'll use all the available cash, estimated available cash. Now, the next two, the next one in yellow are the secondary projects in order of priority. That's if we were to have more availability of cash, these would be the next in line to be funded. And then the last bottom right table are the desired projects by staff that would be funded if we win the lottery, I suppose. With that, I'll stand by for questions.
Councilmember Brink.
Just a note on that last table there, are listed, would I understand that those would not be in any part of the facility improvements from the above table?
Correct.
Okay, very good. And then just a comment, I wanted to say thank you for all of your work presenting this and editing after the City Council retreat. It, to me, really speaks volumes that staff was extremely prudent with the budget and the reserves and the savings measures early on. And that's why we're fortunate enough to have some money to still play with here at the end of the day. So thank you for your efforts.
Correct, yeah.
Councilmember Wendell.
I had a question about some of the COVID relief funds referenced on slide 8 and then broken down further in the appendix.
Okay. Slide, sorry.
I noticed that we referenced $193,000 from Brookings Municipal Utilities. Thought maybe in the appendix that might list some expenses related to the forgiveness or the waiving of utility costs that might have been waived for citizens in the spring. I know there was some discussion locally about BMU having to incur those costs. I was curious if they didn't come from these federal relief dollars, where did BMU recoup those costs? Or do we have a sense of what a dollar amount we're not able to pay their utility bills in the spring and summer?
And I'm unaware of that situation. I know that the rules were very strict that this was not to fund revenue replacement, at least
Okay.
this, I guess, package or this grant. We can follow up with BMU, but they were aware of all the rules that we were subject to, and they try to maximize everything as well. But I don't know if they were able to find a source to offset that.
I think maybe at some point when we're doing a reflection back on costs that were incurred or revenues lost over this 2-year window, that would be something of interest to me to understand how it impacted a municipal utility company. The other question I had was related to beta services, and I noticed that they received about $16,000, but I also saw recent communication that they're providing transportation to and from vaccine appointments in the community. Will there be cost recovery for the beta service from some source for that transportation?
Once again, Eric can talk to this, but I will tell you first, our team was outstanding at trying to go through all the loopholes as much as possible that the state put in front of us. I should walk back. I'm very, very grateful for what the state provided us for funding opportunities, but there was a lot of restrictions. And so this money did go to beta, but we had to actually work with Boys and Girls Club. We had to work with a bunch of different outside entities in order to even get that $16,000. I'm not sure if, I know Beta won't be able to tap into these dollars because it's already done. In fact, the state hasn't even told us what they're going to do with the remaining funds. My assumption is they're going to put it in a pool where you allocate it throughout the state. So I'm not aware yet if they'll be able to get reimbursed for it. It'll be something of interest to the extent the city probably won't even be able to might not be able to get reimbursed for the use of SwiftTel as well. And so we're making those submissions. We're holding on to the receipts, potentially make the submissions in the future, but it might be something that we all have to just consume. But I can surely follow back up once I hear from Beta.
Thank you.
And if I can add, the $16,000 that they actually did end up receiving, originally no funding for any agency, and through conversations with the state, we were able to highlight the services that Beta provides, and this $16,000 come from COVID-related transportation. We were able to prove that. So I'm not promising anything, but if we do have a second relief, we know the rules, and hopefully we can maximize that as well.
Councilmember Bacon, you were next, then Niemeyer, and then Collins.
That's fine. I just wanted to thank you. Each year you get so much better at this and make it readable and understandable for we lay people who don't live and breathe and eat this like you do every day. So thank you very much for
Appreciate it.
that.
Councilman Niemeyer.
So let's go to slide 4. The bar graph of the tax revenue by industry.
I apologize. We changed that slide. It didn't have the right information, and we realized that
okay,
this
all right.
morning. Yeah.
So, Eric, we have wholesale trade at 147%. I mean, describe entities that would be part of the wholesale tribe or trade.
Yes, and I was reading that there's one thing that it's important to note. It's growing. So we
Okay.
did have a question into the state to see what the component of that is, and let me look at that. So it was mostly electrical equipment, plumbing equipment, air heating, industrial supplies. That's basically what makes that category. There's not much more than we can get besides those very generic. My gut tells me that it's sort of a reclassification between the retail and the wholesale trade, but that's as deep as we can get.
Right. Okay. And then retail, it shows now that we have 5.7% decrease. Whereas on this one, on my bar graph, it said 3.5. This must have gotten adjusted then after We had December's numbers then?
Yes, yes, I apologize, as those numbers are, the ones that we're sending the packages was for this year.
Okay.
As we were reviewing the content today, this morning, we realized that the chart that should be
All right.
accurate is this one, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
No, thank you, and apologize for that.
Councilman Collins.
Yeah, Eric, I just wanted to echo, I think you did a wonderful job here. This is the first time I've seen something like this, and it's easy to understand, for me anyways. I was pleasantly surprised to see that the Swiftel Center had a surplus. I wasn't expecting that. The folks did a good job out there, and you as well, making that work. So I just want to thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, and I would like to pass that on to my peers. I mean, this is a team effort result. Like everybody was, when we had to have those difficult conversations, everybody came to the table. So made it a lot easier. Thank you, appreciate it.
City Manager.
Mayor Corbett?
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Tilton Burn.
Sorry, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of the readability of this report. Eric, thank you for the hard work you put into this and for presenting it so clearly and concisely. I hope that the kind of dive into this as well, because I do think it gives a good snapshot of what the year was. And then I want to extend my thanks to the entire city staff and department heads for all of the work that you all did throughout the entire year to make sure that our budget did end up looking so favorably during a year where we had such challenges. So thank you across the board for all the hard work that was done.
Now, City Manager.
Thank you. Eric, can you go back to that link? I just want to hit on it real quick. So, city council members and the public watching this, I'd really encourage you to go check out this link. It's a little insight, as Eric mentioned, into the performance metrics that we're going to present later this month, early next month. And what's neat about this link is it actually gives you interactive capabilities to see what each month was for dollar amounts compared to previous year, and really gives you more insight. And our plan is to update this quarterly so that citizens can see how this thing is evolving with all of our different revenue sources. So that's number one. Number two is, just as Holly said, our staff and our department heads did a phenomenal job, tightening their belts, trying to ensure that we're in the greatest financial position possible for the foreseeable future, while ensuring that we're not impacting our citizens and the services they desire. But finally, the state legislature did also pass some legislation this year that allows us to have the budget process completed rather than October, later on in the year, which would allow us, as Eric mentioned on one of these slides, we're doing our best guess on how sales tax is going to end. We start in April with some of those projections. We refine it through June and July. This allows us to push it off a little bit further, and have better estimates for you and have a more concise and accurate budget for you. So those are things to consider as we move forward through this year's budget process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rangel. Okay, I don't think SDSU, any students are here. I know some were going to hang around, but they weren't sure if they'd make it. So, all right, we'll jump into open forum. And open forum is a time where you can have announcements and comments. And I want to begin by saying I think we did, but I want to make sure that we extend thanks to everybody that worked on the pod. The staff at the Swiftel Center were fantastic. Tom, thanks so much, and I'm sure you passed it along. If you were at it, it's one of the best organized events I've ever been at. I didn't even feel a shot, so Patty didn't either. But just appreciate, the staff and our staff and all the medical staff and everybody around City of Brookings that put all this work into it, and it was a total success with over 1,000 people, as the British would say, jabbed. And now getting ready again for this Thursday for another group, so really appreciate all the people putting in the work on that. So, okay, open forum time. Anybody want to speak to a topic that's not on the agenda tonight?
Good evening, Mayor Corbett and City Council members. My name is Jeanette Gibbons, and I've lived in Brookings more than half my life now. Raised my children here. This is the best place I've ever lived, other than growing up on the farm. So I'm here to speak about the COVID mandates that still exist in our city. And as I hear more and more stories about the COVID mandates being abolished, eradicated, gone, Texas, we hear the states. Our own state had no state mandates. So the mandates that occurred at our local levels, which rather disappoints me, I might say. I do want to say also, I feel that I'm in very good company with the SDSU alum. Go Jacks. I'm also an SU alum, as well as my husband, all of our children, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law. So go Jacks. I also worked on campus for about 20 years as a computer science instructor with backgrounds in health science, and I have a very personal interest in health. So I would like to read my statements here. And some of the things I'm going to say are talking about things that happen at the national level, because national level / worldwide level, because this pandemic, we're all in it together worldwide, which has been scary. And I'm ready for a better world for myself, for my children, for our entire community. So I'll read my statements. I do have a lot of information. I've come at this with 60 to 80 hours of research that I've done myself beginning in November, early November. Everything from COVID to the election to the crisis with the children being rescued worldwide due to trafficking. So I have an arsenal of information behind me. I've listened to medical doctors around the world through my connections through the internet, of course. The world is at our fingertips. I've talked to physicians personally for hours. So that's where my statements are coming from.
Can you speak into the mics of the people
Yes,
at home?
of course.
Can
I'm
hear you?
sorry.
Thank you.
So here's my statements. The COVID pandemic is a house of cards, and once 1 or 2 cards are pulled out of the structure, it will crumble quickly. Too many professionals and too many common folks know too much. Yes, there is a virus, and it has been deadly for some. How many is difficult to assess, since causes of deaths and comorbidities have not been reported accurately, and even in normal times, these can be subjective assessments. I'll draw on my personal experience there of my father, who had Alzheimer's disease. For years and years, I watched him slip away from me, not know me, and at the end, he was in the hospital with Alzheimer's and pneumonia. So did he die from Alzheimer's, or did he die from pneumonia? Let's talk about how this pandemic was escalated to the crisis status at the very start. Scary numbers were needed quickly. No problem, we were all faced with something we'd never been faced with before. We saw professionals, doctors, and others trotted out in front of the cameras, and we watched that hours and hours on end through the news broadcast. So then we had the PCR test. And I've read and studied about the inventor of the PCR test. I've read and listened to comments made by other medical professionals stating that the PCR test is not accurate. You could have had a common cold 2 weeks ago and you come back with a positive test. You may be totally asymptomatic and demonstrate a positive test. A half of a grapefruit demonstrated a positive test. So I'm sorry, but if we have based everything that we're doing on false results, I can't follow that science. And I studied science, microbiology, chemistry, my degree in health science, along with computer science and a master's in computer science later. SDSU taught me how to think independently. I came at that from childhood, being very inquisitive and questioning lots of things growing up. SDSU cultivated that love of learning, that ability to question and not accept things just given to me. So scary numbers based on a PCR test that is inaccurate does not add up to good science for me. Asymptomatic carriers, we were told, you know, the ones that came back as positive tests, but they have no symptoms, well, they're asymptomatic carriers, excuse me. So now we have the guilt factor. You don't have any symptoms, but yet you may be a carrier and you may kill somebody else, in so many words. That's worked well for my mother, who is 91 years old, and also a survivor of an experimental treatment for COVID. I won't even say she survived COVID. She survived the experimental COVID treatment, which was a scary situation. Her alone in an assisted living facility in Chamberlain. I'm not allowed to go in and see her, although I did. I signed a waiver. I went in to see her while she was in treatment, living at the facility, and I signed a waiver and said, I don't care if I get it. I'm strong enough, I'll survive it. And I had a plan in place to do that. So besides PCR tests, professionals telling us how scared we need to be, I'm in full panic mode, and I went along with her with the scary treatment. She survived, 91 years young now. So what else can we do to drive up the numbers, to increase the fear? Let's put ill people back into nursing homes. Now, we have not lived in a bubble. We know about the stories from New York. Who's the most vulnerable in our society? Well, this disease didn't affect our children, thankfully. but it did impact the elderly. So we put those people back in the nursing homes, and more of them die. Well, obviously, that drives up the statistics and adds to the fear. And as you can tell, I am quite passionate about this. I'm just very upset at things that have happened and things that are still happening. I also understand how masks work and don't work. You'll notice I did not come in wearing a mask. I don't really have a health condition that prevents me from wearing a mask. I choose not to wear a mask. The masks allow air and germs to pass through them. The microorganisms do not stop at the mask. So what good does the mask do? If I sneeze or cough, or if someone else sneezes or coughs at me, the water droplets are stopped at the mask, outside and inside. I'll take my chances on the ones coming at me from the outside. I'm strong and healthy. I also think that if I'm ill, instead of coughing and sneezing and passing germs, I should just stay home maybe until I'm feeling better and not spread germs, whether it's COVID, whether it's a common cold, whether it's bronchitis, or any other communicable disease. The statistics that drove the hysteria are a scam. And then people have died. What do I call these cases? I call them crimes against humanity. Safe, effective treatments were and are available. I've talked to doctors who use them. Those that I know personally, those that I've heard speaking around the world. Let's see, hydroxychloroquine, we may hear and remember that story, or very early on. Orange Badman said that was a good treatment. Well, we know what mainstream media does with a report like that. False articles were published in esteemed academic journals, medical academic journals. We may have heard of the Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine, two of the highest esteemed journals in medicine. So they ran with a story, and I cannot say for certain, but I suspect that people very high up in those journals knew that those reports were false. They were published, they remained in the journals for 2 weeks, and what happened during those 2 weeks? The mainstream media is immediately unleashed and breathlessly told us for 2 weeks, hydroxychloroquine, what was it going to do to us? It was going to damage our heart permanently. Oh my gosh, should I go with COVID and see if I can survive it somehow? Or should I go with this treatment, which is going to cause permanent heart damage? What would be my choice? I have no idea unless I armed myself with research and knowledge and made a good choice. After 2 weeks in those journals, oh my gosh, retracted, and people were told that those were false. Crickets? Did I hear the mainstream media run with that story? Did I hear it at all in the mainstream media? Not until very recently. I learned it through research and by talking to medical professionals who are conscientious enough and driven to do the right thing, even if it means they lose their jobs, like Dr. Simone Gold and others. Crimes against humanity, let me just kind of speak to that a little bit more. The articles were retracted, but the damage was done. There are doctors still to this day being directed by authorities in their clinics and organizations not to prescribe hydroxychloroquine. I've talked to doctors who have successfully treated their patients with that drug with no one hospitalized, and who reported that their patients felt immediately better the next day or two and recovered fully within 5 days. Fast forward, here's what I see coming soon to a court nearby. Yes, I'm talking about a court of law. Currently in Germany, you may or may not have heard this. I heard this and learned it about 2 or 3 days ago through my research, kind of stumbling upon the story. There is a massive crimes against humanity civil lawsuit, an international lawsuit in Europe. So what does that mean? This international lawsuit, led by lawyer Dr. Rainer Fulmich, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, he's in Germany, and his team have been building this case since June 2020. So we can't go after pharmaceutical companies, but guess what? They can go against government officials, they can go against health professionals who have created these mandates and ruined people's lives, destroyed livelihoods of businesses, the small hometown businesses like we have here. It was okay for me to go to Hy-Vee, Walmart, Runnings, Lowe's. I could go into those stores, but excuse me, you can't go into the small hometown businesses where they're limited in the number of people that can be in their facility at one time. I can go in and have a cup of coffee. Well, now you can, and we have been for a while. And I have to wear my mask to place my order, but as soon as I sit down, the germs must fly over my head because now everybody is sitting and eating and drinking without a mask on. And if I approach somebody, I politely ask them if it's okay if I give them a hug or a handshake and we agree on it before we do it. We need to reclaim our lives and get back to normal. I would like to see the mandates lifted and gone tonight, if not 5 months ago, which is probably about the time I stopped wearing a mask and decided I was not going to live in fear. I wish I could talk to Ms. Sackreiter, although she already left. I'd like to thank her for the extra courage that she gave me to come up here and speak to you. People's lives and livelihoods have been negatively impacted. Government officials, local through national levels, have participated either knowingly or unknowingly if they didn't do their own research. Healthcare providers and healthcare administrators have also been participants in this massive hoax. I would encourage anyone in a position of authority using the COVID pandemic as cover for their decisions and their actions that impact others to consider the ramifications, the civil lawsuits that are likely inevitable. It's serious business, people's lives, my life, my children's lives, my grandchildren's lives, my grandmother, my mother, my mother-in-law. All of their lives have been impacted and to a certain level destroyed. A year out of our life we cannot have back. I couldn't see my mother. She today had a visit with her sister who has not been there for over a year. They live 45 miles apart. Yes, do you think I'm upset? Yes, I am upset. But I also feel that I am in a position where I can ask you to do the right thing. Lift these mandates. We are responsible adults. We can make the choice. If you want to wear your mask, if anyone here wants to wear the mask day in and day out for the rest of their life, I'm fine with that. Do not expect us to follow rules and mandates blindly. We will not. We are banding together. I have met a half a dozen people in the last 3 days by just speaking. So I thank you for your time. The mandates are falling around the country and vary even from one town, city to another in our own state. It's time for Brookings to end the mandates. Thank you. And I do have tons of information. I meant to have a front and back handout printed out before I came to pass out to anyone who wants it. I invite anyone here to contact me. My name is Jeanette Gibbons, Gibbons. I'm in the phone book. You may have to leave a message on my answering machine. I would be happy to share information with you. I'm not telling other people what to do. Do your own research, make your own decisions, and you as city council members, give everybody in Brookings that chance. So thank you.
All right, anyone else on open forum?
Hello again, Bradley Walker, resident of Brookings. I'd like to speak on the COVID thresholds again. It is well past time to repeal the restrictions on businesses and get Brookings back to normal, as was the case a month ago. All the thresholds for advancing to phase 4 have been met. Yet the council continues to drag their feet and not repeal the ordinance. You say you use science to base your decisions on, but it seems you only use science when it supports your narrative. Until recently, you've been posting updates daily, and now you have backed off and only doing it once a week using week-old data. The threshold question in question seems to be the test positivity rate. You choose to use the data provided by the Brookings Health System instead of the DOH website, since for some reason it's higher. I sent emails to all the council members today regarding the current rate from the DOH website for Brookings, which is 2.6% positivity, which is below the 3% required to advance to phase 4. In your latest threshold update, dated March 3rd, you have it at 4% per Brookings Health System. The question came up at the meeting when you renewed the ordinance a month ago, when Mr. Collins asked the head of the Brookings Health System, Mr. Merkley, the question of which numbers were more accurate. Mr. Merkley replied he would defer to the DOH numbers. In the COVID threshold report dated January 21st, 2021, you stated that the Brookings Health System feels that they can handle the lowest anticipated number of hospitalizations, which was 5 at that time, but will be challenged to handle the highest anticipated number, which is 15. In the COVID threshold update you posted on the 4th of March, just this last week, it states that Brookings Health System can handle the lowest anticipated number of COVID cases, which is 1, but will be challenged, limiting the ability to sustain care for the long term with the anticipated number of 4. Now, how can that be if you can handle 5 in January, but you can't handle 4 now? As you know, other cities in South Dakota have allowed their mandates and restrictions to expire or be removed, as well as many other states. Cases, hospitalizations, and death are declining statewide and here in Brookings. As you know, we have dropped from substantial spread to moderate spread, getting very close to minimal. The science doesn't support continuing restrictions. The science says it's time to get back to normal. And then there's also been some concern over the new variants that are appearing. I also sent you on the same email a graph from the CDC website dated March 7th, 2 days ago, stating that there have been 0 confirmed cases of any of the variants in South Dakota. And there have been just a little over 4,000 cases nationwide after a month. So that is just technically insignificant. So I would suggest to you that after your city manager gives you the update for tonight, the COVID update tonight, that one of you makes a motion to repeal the ordinance immediately. Thank you.
Anyone else in the open forum? Okay, I'm going to close the open forum. There were no contracts or change orders. First reading, and under first reading, this time the title of the ordinance is read, no votes taken, brief public comments, and council discussion is permitted. And Community Development Director Mike Struck.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and council members, members of the public. Ordinance 21-006 is an ordinance rezoning 2 properties along 6th Street, immediately west of the existing Hillcrest Aquatic Center. The addresses are 1402 and 1404 6th Street. They are currently zoned B2A, which is a neighborhood business type district. The applicant is proposing to rezone them to a B2 district, which is a general commercial district. The comprehensive plan does identify this area as an urban strategy area in which it is anticipated and planned for change over the years to come. And within that urban strategy area, it's identified for a mix of various housing types, commercial types, office types, and service type uses. We had a pretty lengthy discussion at the Planning Commission meeting on this. It does come to you as a 7-0 recommendation from the Planning Commission recommending approval. And there was some questions that came up here in the last few days in regards to the buffer yards, and if we have an opportunity to switch to the, thank you, Jake, to give you an idea. So the first table, when you look at the zoning of the proposed development, it's currently a B2A. It's proposed to go to a B2. So the land adjacent to it is zoned residential. So you have 2 options. You can go with a type B or a type F. And if the parking or the building height goes over 30 feet in height, then it would bump up to a type C or F. So in this particular case, they're looking at a buffer yard of B or F. And so if we go to the next table, you look at the buffer yard for a type B, The distance from the property line to the parking lot is 15 feet. And so within that 15-foot buffer area, they're required to plant a minimum of 5 trees and 10 shrubs per 100 lineal feet. And then that same type B buffer from the property line to the structure is 25 feet, and then they'd still have those same planting requirements. If they were to go to the type F, that's simply just a 40-foot buffer, and it's just simply green space. There is no requirement for tree plantings. That's the way the ordinance previously was. And when we looked at the buffer yard options, we were more interested in trying to achieve vertical type screening to help buffer the residential and commercial uses. So if there's any additional clarity that's needed on that, I'd certainly be open for further discussions. But with that, I would stand for any questions. The applicant is in the audience as well.
I was going to ask the applicant to stand by for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Yeah, I think I probably should just say a
If
few
you'd
words.
introduce yourself, James.
James Drew, CD Properties, representing CD Properties. I'm under contract to purchase this home, or these homes, from VK Properties. And so I'm here tonight representing them on this request. Yeah, I think Mike did a pretty good job of giving you the background on it, but I just wanted to add maybe a few things. Looking at ultimately redeveloping this piece of property. The building we're looking at doing is a 2,200 square foot building. The two lots combined would be 24,000 square feet, so relatively small building footprint for the size of the lot that it is. We're not looking at a project such as like the Lofts or 6th Street Center where you've got multiple lots and you're looking at multiple story building. Again, yeah, we're proposing a 1-story building. It's 18 foot to the top of the parapet, so flat roof building, which is essentially smaller than the existing homes that are on the site now. The elevations of the building, exterior elevations will have a mixture of brick and stucco with a little bit of siding. We plan on setting the building closest to 6th Street at the minimum setbacks and putting the parking on the side and to the rear of the building. As Mike mentioned, we'll meet the 15-foot rear yard setbacks. Plan on putting the trees and shrubs in. I'd be open to any suggestions that someone might have, but I mean, we know the intent is to screen the commercial from the residential off of 5th Street there, and we want to be good neighbors about that. The parking lot lighting will be directed to the lot as not to cause any unwanted glare to the neighbors, but whether it was B2 or B2A, we would still have parking lot lighting, but I am aware of that, situation. The roof drains will be buried and ran to 6th Street to the storm sewer. Although the parking lot is not fully designed yet, there'll be no additional runoff or stormwater runoff to the neighbors from the project that isn't already existing now from the 2 homes that are on the site. There's a lighted intersection about a block east and a block west of this site on 6th Street. And 6th Street, of course, has a dedicated turn lane for getting on and off. So the street is designed for this type of property. As Mike mentioned, it's identified in the 2040 comp plan as an urban strategy area. So with that, I'd open it for any questions you may have, and thank you for your consideration.
Council questions, Councilman Wendell?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question that's probably more appropriate for Mike, I think. It has to do with kind of our long-range thinking around the comprehensive plan. For those of us that have been on the council for a couple of years, I'm maybe comparing the decision-making process around this project as the one we went through when we were considering the Lofts project between 11th and 12th. And if I'm making some unfair comparisons in my mind, I want you to correct those for me. So one of the things that struck me as a little different about our thinking around that block in general was that there was an existing alley between the houses that face 6th Street and the houses that face the backside of that block. And that's not true on the block we're considering now, correct?
Yeah, the lofts on Park Hill did not have an alley.
There wasn't an
No,
alley
there
through
was
that block?
about, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 8 houses that were 6 to 8 houses that were in that area. On the west end of the block, it appeared like there was an alley because it provided access to some of those houses, but it did not extend all
It
the way
wasn't
through the
through,
entire block. It stopped approximately maybe half a way in or so that served some of those houses, but neither this particular location or the lots at Park Hill had an alley access.
Okay. Are there blocks as we think about, I remember when we were having those conversations, and I think we understood that we're going to be living in some transition years right now as we try to repurpose some of those 6th Street facing properties. As you were having conversations around that, are there blocks that I can certainly understand the homeowners whose yards will come right up to the back end of what will now potentially be commercial developments. And so I'm trying to balance out what this buffer zone does for them, what the mandate to plant trees does for them, and we're confident all of that can be carried out according to our comprehensive master plan. And then this won't be the last block where we will encounter this. So do we feel like as we make decisions around this block, we'll be able to repeat it as we move west down 6th Street, or the potential of moving west down 6th Street?
Yeah, so in this particular block, obviously the Hillcrest Aquatic Center takes up a large portion of the area to the east. As you move to the west, there's these 2 houses, and then right next door is an Advance, which is also zoned A. And then there's one house in between there that's a RB4, which is a residential business district, and then there's the 6th Street Center. And so this is a block that's in transition, and we kind of looked at that and knew that those existing uses over time were going to change. In this particular situation, this happens to be one of the first that have come forward since the comprehensive plan was adopted. And the question is whether it is appropriate to make that transition to a B2 or to leave it in B2A. And so that's really the decision that's being considered with the first reading tonight, and then the second reading and public hearing that will follow at the March 23rd meeting. But we did take that into consideration as, the buffer yards was one of the recent changes to the ordinance to try and provide some of that protective measures. We have things within not only the comprehensive plan, but in our zoning ordinance that requires the screening of parking from adjacent residential structures. So we do try to take that into consideration of those properties that are immediately adjacent to these areas. In the long term, I think we will see some changes on 6th Street. There'll probably be a little bit more gradual changes. How far those changes extend, north or south of 6th Street. And that was one of the discussions that the Planning Commission had a few months back when we were looking at our commercial corridor overlay, is how far should that go? Should it go, a half a block, a full block? What do we do to make sure that we're protecting those residential neighbors, that typically on 5th Street and 7th Street? So those are all things that are taken into consideration. I think that's why it's important to look at the design of a project. And that's challenging for the council, because at this stage, there really isn't a site plan to review, because it's trying to determine whether or not a B2 zoning is appropriate for the area. And once that's established, that provides the developer the ability to move forward in designing to those particular standards. So, it's a little bit unfortunate at this particular time, but that's just the way the zoning process is set up.
Any other questions? Mr. Struck said public hearing will be on March 23rd. Thank you, gentlemen. And Mr. Struck, you're up again.
Thank you. Ordinance 21-007 is a rezoning of two lot addition from an I1R restricted industrial district to an I1 district. The two lots are highlighted there on the screen. They're along Prince Drive. The current owner of the property is Daktronics, and they are under contract to sell the lots. The individual is interested in rezoning. The adjacent land uses around there are I-1 to the north and to the east, and then you can see the I-1R is immediately to the south and to the west. The I-1R was intended to be a restricted district and really along some of our major corridors. And what the I-1R brings is it's a very detailed site plan, landscaping standards to make sure that our key corridors along the interstate are well maintained and well designed. The particular applicant in this case is looking to do a couple of uses that would not be consistent with the I-1R district. They wouldn't be allowed, and is seeking to do uses that would be allowed in just your general light industry district. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and this comes to you with a 7-0 recommendation for approval of the rezoning from the Planning Commission, and stand for any questions you may have.
Okay. Okay, now we'll go into, any public comment? Yes, thanks, Steve. Okay, now we'll go into second hearing, or public hearings and second reading, and Brianna Dorn sat here patiently all night long as a committee chair. And Bree, anything you want to say to ordinance 21-003?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Council and Mayor. My name is Brianna Dorn, and I'm the current chair of the Committee for People with Disabilities. I spoke a lot at the previous meeting, so and there's more information in the memo that's still attached. I'll just refresh the two reasons why we are asking to move our name from the Committee for People who have Disabilities to the Brookings Disability Awareness Committee. The first reason is to just update our language and modernize our committee structure. And the second is to really align to our committee's mission, which is to bring awareness to the people in Brookings who have disabilities, as well as the resources available for those individuals and friends of those individuals. So that is why we're asking to move this name change, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Any questions? Fantastic committee and hardworking committee, and we sure appreciate. Okay, at this time, entertain a motion to approve ordinance 21-003.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Public comment to this. Council comment. Please call a roll.
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance 21-003 is approved. Thank you again, Brianna. All right, now we call our CFO back up here for ordinance 21-005.
Good evening. The following ordinance is requesting approval for the second budget appropriation for 2021. This ordinance consists of three main parts. The first one are the carry forward unspent funds for the breakdown of these carry forwards are $308,000 to the general fund, $1.5 million to the CIP, $22,000 for the South Main project, $133,000 for the Bob Sheldon project, $4.5 million for the overpass, $388,000 for the airport, and $20,000 for the Edgework. As a reminder, these will be funded from projects that didn't get implemented last year, and they're being carried forward to this year. The second part are items that were not originally funded back in September because we were budgeting very conservative, or were not in our radar. But given the estimated surplus, we would like to request to fund this as well. These items add up to about $432,000 for the general fund and $55,000 for the CIP fund. The third part is just moving all the engineering department expenses into the newly created Public Works Department. Those have a zero net impact in our budget this year. With that, all the detail on what makes these amounts is in the appendix for the ordinance. And with that, I'll stand by for questions.
Okay, first let's begin with a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, motion is second. Now, any questions of CFO? Public questions, comments? Okay, Bonnie, please call the roll.
Wendell,
Aye.
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton Burn.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance 21-005 is approved, and here comes Jackie Lanning for the next three.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and City Council and audience at home. The first item is a public hearing and action on Resolution 21-019, resolution of intent to lease real property at the Brookings Airport to South Dakota State University. And the city is renewing several hangar leases at the Brookings Airport, and this lease is for a 4,800 square foot Site 201 for SDSU. And I do have one correction from the council packet. We had presented a 25-year lease for all these upcoming leases. We had revamped our lease agreement language. And we found out just here yesterday that due to SDSU requirements, they're requesting that the lease term be the previous lease term, which is 5 years. And they have been leasing this site since the 1970s. And so we're comfortable with that language. They would have to run things through the Board of Regents if it's a long-term lease. And so for this item, we would recommend a motion to adjust the resolution to approve a 5-year lease. And so we visited with City Attorney just prior to this meeting to see if that would be allowed. And so this would be a 5-year lease, and the lease rate will be 13 cents a square foot with the lease amount of $624 per year. And then that would be increased 2% annually and subject to review at the end of the 5 years. And staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to, let's open and close public hearing on this one. Council comments?
So moved.
Second. Any comments, council?
I just have a question. I noticed that the conversion from a 5-year lease to a 25-year lease, I'm just curious, is that an industry standard for airports, a 25-year term, or how do we arrive at that?
Our earlier leases back in the 80s and 90s were longer term, more like a 25-year lease. And then when we started the master plan and relocation process in the early 2000s, we were converting leases to 5-year leases. Now we're going back to those longer term leases now that we know that the airport won't be moving, to another site, and we reconstructed everything on site here.
And then those lessees do have an option out before 25 years, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we can, both parties can
Terminate.
retract the lease prior to the 25-year time frame.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Bonnie, please call the roll.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Next one, Jackie.
Okay, thank you. This next is a public hearing and action on Resolution 21-020, resolution of intent to lease real property at the Brookings Airport to Robert Fite. And so here we are renewing a hangar lease for 7,600 square feet on Site 203, as you can see on the map there. This would be a 25-year term lease with the lease rate of being the same 13 cents per square foot. Lease amount will be $988 per year, and then that will be increased by 2% annually and subject to renew every 5 years. And staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Council comments or questions? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any comments? Please call a roll.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon.
Aye.
All right, that's approved. And that should be one more, Janet.
Okay, and this final item, Public hearing and action on Resolution 21-021, a resolution of intent to lease real property at the Brookings Airport to Harry Thompson. And we're renewing the lease with Harry Thompson, 180 square feet, located on Site 135, as shown on the map. The lease will be a 25-year term, and with the lease rate at the 13 cents per square foot, similar to the other leases. And staff recommends approval.
Okay, Jackie, thank you. Okay, now open and close the public comment hearing. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Council comments, questions? All right, please call a roll.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Next one, turn over to city manager, I guess, for resolution 21-022.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and Dan, I appreciate you staying for this item as well. Dan's here with us from the Summer Arts Festival Committee, and they're requesting the use of Pioneer Park for the Summer Arts Festival. Usually this is on the regular meeting, just so council is aware of this request, especially during COVID this year. The event will occur July 10th or 11th. I did, as I mentioned, request this to be placed further down in the other business for your discretion. The event will occur many months from now, and we hope that we'll be in a better position in COVID, even more so than we are tonight. There are activities throughout this event that are all outdoors. I'll point that out for the public that are maybe watching. And the event will have to adhere to any council regulations. As of right now, according to your ordinance, anyone who requests an event with a permit, those attendees will have to wear a mask. But once again, it all depends on what council does between now and then, and they would just have to adhere to those requirements. At the end of the day, staff does recommend approval for this, and I know Dan is here as well if you should have any questions of the committee.
Okay, Dr. Kemp, do you want to speak to that or just? You don't have to speak to it. I just wondered if you wanted to. I know it's been a long night. Sorry. You stand by. Council entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I think that's all of us. Any public comment now? Anyone care to speak to this? Seeing none, please call a roll.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins.
Aye.
Once again, thank you and your committee. I know it was a tough year last year making the decision to cancel it, but we're hopeful better days are ahead this year. So thank you for your work on that. Okay, city manager, COVID-19 up.
Currently in Brookings County, we have 67 active cases. The 7-day rolling average of positivity from the hospital dashboard is at 4.8%, which is down 2% from the last report. The only a portion of one of the three thresholds is currently being met according to the weekly threshold report. Approximately 37 people in Brookings have died since the beginning of the epidemic. That number has not changed since the last report. Brookings County community spread has decreased from substantial to moderate. In Brookings County, 7,593 vaccinations have been administered to 5,175 people. There's a discrepancy there between people who got the first shot and the second shot, and that's what that number is. The Brookings hospital beds used for COVID still remains at 0. And in South Dakota, there are 2,097 active cases. There are 71 people currently hospitalized across the state of South Dakota. Approximately 1,901 people have died in South Dakota since the beginning of the epidemic. The Department of Health does report that 30% of the state have received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. And since our last report, we did have the mass vaccination that the mayor reported on, where we gave out approximately 1,028 vaccinations to people here in Brookings County. I want to once again thanks to the many volunteers that participated in that process. I will note that we do have events planned in March as well as April, and we're still seeking volunteers. So those who are interested in volunteering, please go to our website, or go to the Department of Health website, or to the Brookings Hospital website, and that would be brookingshealth.org/vaccine to sign up. We do depend on volunteers to help us out. I would note that we are probably the first community that had our own call center set up. That was done through the city, and I think that was a critical part in making this a successful event. Finally, I would note that council will hold a work session next Tuesday to discuss the ordinance. That will be the only item that we'll have on the agenda. We are also requesting that those local professionals attend that meeting as well. Right after that meeting, we'll hold a regular meeting for the first hearing of that ordinance, depending on what direction council would like to do, and then a second hearing potentially March 23rd. That's all I have for the report.
Okay, thank you. Looking ahead. Tonight's 5:30 study session. We'll have the I-29 update, the 90% report by the city engineer, but then also the COVID ordinance discussing that. Then on March 23rd, we'll have possibly a second reading on the ordinance. And then we'll declare items of surplus, proclamation, Developmental Disability Awareness Month, rezoning 2 areas, city progress report by the assistant city manager, something I know everybody looks forward to, and COVID-19 update. So anything else you'd like to add to a future generation, or future items?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Collins.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider ordinance 21-004, the speed limit increase on 20th Street South. I'd received some new information that I didn't know prior to the vote, so I would like to change my vote on the ordinance.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a second on that. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. All in favor of adding that to the meeting on March 23rd? Any others?
Should be roll call.
Okay. No more comments? Okay, Bonnie, please call roll.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton-Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett.
Aye. Okay, that'll be on the 23rd. Anything else, Council?
Yes,
Councilman Brink?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to just state that I know we're going to be going into our study session next week where we're going to be talking about the COVID ordinance again. And I do think it's worth having that discussion. But I also want us to just be aware of how much has changed since this ordinance initially went into effect. I personally, of course, don't agree with it and would have not put it into place if it were up to me. So I'm going to try my luck and see if this will work, but would there be any support or a second for our study session, taking our existing 001 ordinance and converting it to guidelines and a resolution format and do a first reading on that on the 16th. We can still have all the discussions we want to about what kinds of behaviors are optimal in different settings, and we can still ask the public to follow guidance and recommendations, but I do believe the time has come to legally take those restrictions away. So that would be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we
I
have a
second the motion.
Okay. My understanding is that's what we were going to do on the 16th, but this is just defining a little bit more.
If that was for the first reading, I'm suggesting a completely different
Okay.
ordinance.
Council?
Yeah.
That'd be fine. I think we're contemplating a couple of versions, but that would be perhaps a little bit different than I'm contemplating, so that would be appropriate for discussion.
Okay. Council comments on that, or? Okay.
Mayor Corbett?
Yes, Councilmember Tilton-Burn.
So just to clarify, is the request that we would have our study session and then go into an actual council meeting to discuss and have a first reading following a study session next week?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess just for clarification, Councilmember Brink, are you asking to potentially turn it to resolution? Because this is what staff had planned on bringing forward. An option number 1, which would continue everything as existing. An option number 2, which would be an ordinance just with a mask mandate. But then it sounds like you would like maybe an option 3 that says all of it's just a resolution.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're clear on that?
Tilton-Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye.
Okay, anything else for future meeting? This time, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
The second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Good night.